Today, August 26th, is Women's Equality Day, and it celebrates the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. This amendment was passed in 1920, and it banned states and the federal government from withholding the right to vote based on sex. By the way, my grandma was born in 1919, so this wasn't that long ago. The theme for 2024 is because when women thrive, we all thrive. While I agree with that statement, the passing of the 19th Amendment didn't really give everyone the right to vote. Many women of color, particularly African American women in the South, faced discriminatory practices. African American men who were supposed to be able to vote after the 15th Amendment of the Constitution was passed also faced Jim Crow laws and other discriminatory practices. This included tactics like literacy tests, poll taxes, and outright intimidation and violence. Pause to read this literacy test. Nobody could pass it, but they only gave it to people that they didn't want to vote, including some African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and poor white voters. Native Americans were not considered U.S. citizens on their own land until the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. Even after gaining citizenship, many states continued to prevent Native Americans from voting through various legal barriers until the mid-20th century. Many Asian Americans were denied citizenship and therefore the right to vote, and it wasn't until the passing of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1943 and subsequent changes to immigration and naturalization laws that Asian Americans began to gain the right to vote. Many Latino Americans, especially in the Southwest, faced language barriers and discriminatory laws that restricted their right to vote. It took many decades and further legislative and judicial action, such as Voting Rights Act of 1965, to dismantle these barriers and ensure broader voting rights for all citizens. But even today, there are barriers to voting. Some states require voters to show specific identification, which can disproportionately affect certain groups who may not have easy access to these IDs. Strict registration rules such as early deadlines and proof of residency requirements can make it harder for eligible voters to register. Voter roll purges can mistakenly remove eligible voters from registration lists, often without adequate notice. Fewer polling places in certain areas can lead to long lines and discourage voting. Some states have cut back on early voting days and hours, limiting options for those who cannot vote on Election Day. Complicated rules for absentee and mail-in voting can make it difficult for people to vote by mail. Intimidation and false information can discourage people from voting or mislead them about voting procedures. Lack of voting materials in languages other than English can prevent non-English speakers from fully understanding the voting process. Many states prohibit individuals with felony convictions from voting even after they have served their sentences. Physical barriers and lack of accessible voting options can prevent people with disabilities from voting. Complicated ballots and voting procedures can deter people from voting if they feel uninformed. So I think a better theme for 2024 is because when all women thrive, we all thrive.